Sheila Deviney, a small-town Oklahoma girl, a cheerleader married to her childhood sweetheart and football star Tyson Hendricks. Her parents, Susan and Dave Deviney, remember each chapter of Tyson and Sheila's love story.
He had said, "Do you remember what I promised when we were children?" And the next thing we knew, she was wearing Tyson's class ring.
But the dream was shattered by divorce years later. Sheila remarried, but that ended in divorce too. Now she was living across the way from her parents in a small home with 2 young kids, slowly putting her life back together.
Sheila was a good mother to him.
And she was going to college. She had just got her degree from Murray State.
But on a freezing January morning, Susan gets a call at work with alarming news from a family friend.
My daughter's house was on fire and that nobody could find her. And so I immediately left. I called school because I was worried that the children were there with her. And the school told me that they were there and they were fine.
Nobody could find Sheila.
The family rushes to her place only to find a burned out shell.
I met the Maysville policeman and I said, "Have they found Sheila?" And with tears in his eyes, he looked at me and said, "I don't have that information."
But as the smoke cleared, firefighters made a terrible discovery on the kitchen floor. The body of Sheila Deviney is found, burned beyond recognition.
Dave went in shock and they had to come and get me. And I said, "I'll get us through this, but you're gonna have to help me get through it." And he looked at me and he held his hand out and we shook and then we sealed it with a kiss. And that's how we get through it every day.
Susan first wonders if a propane heater might have somehow triggered the inferno that killed her daughter.
She had one propane heater in her living room and they had all slept in there because she couldn't afford all the utilities.
In the aftermath, Dave meets with Fire Marshal Joanne Sellers at the scene.
She walked me through the house and was explaining to me how she thought the fire had started on the north end and blew through the south. Her kitchen stove range there had a pan that had been melted on it.
According to the fire marshal's report, the fire originated on the kitchen stove and the front left burner was left on with the pot on top of it, concluding this appears to be an accidental fire. But something about the tragedy didn't look like an accident to a propane inspector brought to the site.
And I told him, I said, "Well, the fire marshal wrote it up as an accidental house fire. I just wonder if you felt that way." And he just stopped and turned around and looked at me and he says, "Come with me."
The Devineys soon hear his shocking revelation.
And he walked in the kitchen where Sheila's body and the range were. He said, "This was set afire." And he walked me back to the bathroom back, which had no heat source in it, and it's gutted. And he said there was a fire started right here. And he said, "This is not an accidental. This was intentionally set."
They kept telling us it was an accident over and over until I was crying.
So the Devineys were stunned to hear a propane expert say Sheila's death by fire was no accident. And soon the coroner's report revealed a shocking confirmation, showing a presence of highly flammable benzene, a major ingredient in gasoline, and toluene, a solvent found in paint thinner, an essential component of TNT. It's found in Sheila's blood, her lungs, and
It was all over her body.
the disturbing discoveries lead her parents to a terrifying conclusion. She was burned alive.
We found that out.
9 months later, an autopsy report comes to the same conclusion. This was a deliberately set fire, and the manner of death was homicide.
Someone to actually set your whole body on fire, that is cruel.
But who would have wanted this mother of 2 dead? Susan and Dave immediately have their own suspicions about Sheila's first ex-husband and father of her 2 children, Tyson Hendricks. He's never been named as a suspect in her death, but they claim Sheila lived in constant fear of Tyson. Her mom says less than a week before the fatal fire, Sheila told her something that haunts her.
She said, "Mom, "You don't know Tyson like I do. He's gonna kill me."
6 years before her death, Sheila obtained a permanent restraining order against Hendricks after a complaint that he was abusing her and the children.
In the divorce decree, it was stated that when she and Tyson exchanged the children for visitation, that they always met in a public facility with people around.
There is no indication he ever violated the order. But their suspicion continued to mount after Sheila's sister-in-law, Betty Deviney, called Tyson's job to tell him Sheila's house was in flames.
I called his work, and the receptionist lady told me that he had left with his brother that morning and that he was not there.
According to the fire marshal's report, Tyson claimed that he was at work when he received a call from Susan Deviney telling him about the fire. With new findings of homicide, Susan and Dave move ahead on their own, gathering hundreds of signatures to convene a grand jury.
We started watching crime shows and see how they solved them. And we realized that if it was going to be solved, we had to do it ourselves because nobody was going to help us.
Tyson Hendricks is among those called to testify. Most of the grand jury report is sealed, but what we did obtain shows the grand jury, quote, received evidence concerning several persons of interest. 30 witnesses were examined, but no indictments were returned.
No indictment, but a further investigation should be done.
To move that investigation along, the Devineys hired Dave Ballard, a former soldier turned private investigator.
I just started pouring through their evidence, but it's taken a long time because they had 14 big tubs and trunks of evidence.
Ballard says he's baffled, claiming many of the known facts have not been used to build a case. Not only did the fire start in the late morning when Sheila was already awake, another big issue, the accelerants found on the scene and in Sheila's lungs.
And they found traces of that in her nasal cavity. She was rendered unconscious, but still alive when the fire at her house began.
Ballard also discovered something the Devineys never knew.
I was able to get a report that outlined actual statements taken from people connected to it that the Devineys were never aware of.
Tyson, who has never faced charges for her death, said he was at work the day of the fire, but Ballard questions that.
The receptionist in the office where he worked and his supervisor and the owner of the company all said that he left before 8 o'clock that morning and returned just around 10:30.
Shortly after, the first call came in reporting Sheila's house was on fire.
I have so many inconsistencies in Tyson's story for where he was that day.
But Tyson Hendricks is no more of a suspect in Sheila's murder than other possibilities. Sheila was married twice, and that morning told her mom in a phone call about another special friend. We tracked down Tyson Hendricks for any answers he could provide.
I went through what I've gone through with my family and the kids and the grand jury, and I don't have anything else to add.
Tyson categorically denied having anything to do with Sheila's death, and with regard to the fire marshal's report,
All I can go off of is what the police department, fire department, sheriff's department has said. That's what I know, and that's it.
now, decades after her death, Sheila's parents are still left with an unsolved murder and so much grief.
Please help us to find justice and get peace in our mind with our daughter's homicide.
Moving on in small ways by planting a tree where her home once stood before the murderous blaze took her life.